Today I spoke with Chris, who has worked with athletes at the highest level, to children, to teenagers. His knowledge on injury prevention, performance is up there with the best of them. And I had a few questions. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. I forgot my name there for a second. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you so much for having me on board.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Before I get into kind of your skill set, I suppose, which is I don't even like genuinely we'll get into it because I don't know where to start with that. So I thought I'd just start as like, what was childhood growing up for you? Where was it, and how did you get into kind of medicine and sports?
I grew up in Orange County, California, a city called Irvine. I had a brother, two loving parents, and we were involved in sports. We're involved in community type stuff. And early on, I just enjoyed the entire sports environment and realized my athletic skills were probably not going to get me too far in that particular world. Uh, did fairly well in school and thought, how can I put this all together? And kind of came up with this concept of, hey, maybe I'll go in the sports medicine world. Instead of being the athlete, I'll be part of the team behind them. Fast forward way too many years, and here we are.
Way too many years. Because that's an interesting point you just made about the team. Because I don't think, and we'll get to like the elite athletes that you've worked with, because I think there's something that's really important to understand that I did want to get into as well, is behind these people that you see is a massive team: physios, masseuse, coaches. How vital has that become for the top athletes?
Absolutely vital. I don't care if you're an individual sport athlete like a figure skater or a team sport athlete like a volleyball player. You have an entire team behind you. You've got your technical team that will coach you, will advise you in the weight room. You have a medical team, whether you want one or not. You need to have somebody to help deal with the day to day discomforts, help correct injuries when they come up, help prevent them. You've got your psychological team. Hopefully, you've got somebody who's doing logistics, figuring out where you're going to stay and who's going to feed you. So that team probably grows as you get to the higher level of sport. You're going to have those people you are working with daily, and then people who will enter your life when there's a big competition. And the better the team is behind you, the better you're going to perform, be it on the field, on the court, or on the rink.
Because one of the things, because you worked with the American volleyball team at Olympic level, didn't you, and went to Olympics?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Because I have this, so it's kind of a varied question. It's going to be a couple of questions, but one of them is that I'm always fascinated to know is, at that elite level, there is a combination, as I understand it. I've never been at that level. Is you've got to kind of physically be good enough and mentally be good enough. You need all of them. And how much of it do you think, like, so actually, I'll word it a different way. I've heard top athletes in the past from various sports saying that there were people who were naturally better than them, but they didn't have the mentality. And I wonder how much of it is lots of people are physically good enough, but mentally lacking.
I think the mental aspect is what's going to separate out perhaps those people who are asked to be on the 12-person final roster, let's say at the Olympic Games. And that's just the ability to be consistent, the ability to handle failure. Any sport, you're going to fail, probably more times you want to admit. How do you handle that? You also need the mental skills to be able to be flexible. Oh, shoot, I felt a twinge. How do I handle that when I've got the big practice coming up? How do I segregate out perhaps things going off the court? We're moving into a training block. This is where they're going to make some selections. I've got some things going on off the court. How do I compartmentalize those as best as possible and be able to provide on the court? How am I going to handle just the coach's request, the coaches want to change my position, want to change my technique? So I think those athletes who have that flexibility, who can handle failure, are going to probably separate themselves out. The athletes who don't have that capability sometimes just don't last with the program.
Yeah. So, because it is quite common, isn't it, that lots of people physically talented enough, whether it's natural ability, but when it comes down to it, they people say they just lack that X factor, or they're just that mentally just couldn't switch it on when it was needed every time.
I agree with that. And also, we've got to admit as we age, we'll have athletes who will come in, they're relatively young, and their physical talent, it carries them. But as they become a little older and the cumulative injury profile goes up, and maybe even the mental grind of, shoot, am I going to have to go overseas and play again for 6 months away from my family? That gets tough. And the ones that seem to do the best have a good mental approach to it. They have a good sense of priorities and a bit of humility that, hey, I get the ability to go and play overseas and play volleyball. Someone is paying me good money to do this instead of a grind. This is a thrill. This is a pleasure.
Yeah, it is. It's always something that has fascinated me the most. And even today, this morning, I was watching some stuff on Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and everybody was just talking about that they trained like literally twice as long and twice as hard as everybody else, and it wasn't for all of their natural gifts and talents. It was when training was over for everybody else, they carried on training, and or they'd get up earlier and train. They'd train after a game and practice stuff after a game, and you just and the thing that always I stumble on is when you see these elite athletes achieving that level, is why other people don't try it as well. And it's just, you know.
Yeah, I think the truly elite are driven and they're looking for as close to perfection as they can get. And they're not going to stop at what the rest of us would consider to be a full day. And it is amazing. And I work with young athletes, and I'll sometimes have them admit to me, I don't want to show up to practice early and do my warm up. Everybody else doesn't. Look, if you watch the elite athletes, they just don't show up for a 9 o'clock practice at 8:45, drop their bag on the side. They probably have been there for an hour. And when that practice is over, they ain't going home right away. They've got something else to do. Their agenda is to be the best they're going to be. It's often behind the scenes. It's not going to make the front page news, but that's why they're in the lineup and that's why they're dominating. So once you become comfortable with that ability that you know you're going to have to work just a bit harder, that's when the gains start to happen.
When when you're working with athletes and training athletes, how would you say the attitude towards injury prevention has changed since when you first started out?
I think we're more aware of strategies to prevent injuries. Unfortunately, because we have, especially in the youth sport domain, seen more overload, overuse injuries. We see a fair number of athletes very dedicated to their craft and sport, but at a young age, they're selecting one sport at the expense of perhaps being a multi-sport athlete. So we have learned that, okay, for athletes who like, let's say, do overhead activities, throw a ball, hit a ball, if you're doing that time and time again, there's going to be injuries. And I think we've come up with some prevention strategies. Unfortunately, some of them aren't that exciting. It's taking time away from sport, it's doing different things. And some athletes don't want that. Again, it goes back to what we just talked about. Well, I've got to keep working at it. I've got to keep putting in the time. Totally agree. But there's a balance where rest is important, variability is important, and hopefully those are the strategies that we can teach kids. Some kids will accept it, others a little bit of a harder sell.
Yeah, it it is like you say. It's as you said something there that caught my attention, especially was the time away. And try not playing that sport. Just take some time out. And because, like you say, if it's a young person and that's their passion, and it's the reason they get up for in the morning, it's a hard sell. I'm not going to listen to that.
they're not going to listen to it, and they're afraid that if they're not out there, their friends are getting better, their friends are getting the call to go and do a different tournament or different activity. So I totally get it. And I've raised three kids, and I can remember when they were going through the youth sport environment, even though my wife and I think we had a pretty good perspective and maybe some, professional background, you still understand, boy, this is what the kids and parents are hearing. Hey, you're missing on this, or hey, if you play with this group, you're going to get better. This is a really good coach. He'll teach you something. So there's a lot of voices in kids' heads telling you what to do, and rest is usually not the loudest one.
That kids is probably a good place to get into as well because on your like within your work you're a pediatrician as well, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
So how is it combined? Like what is it like? How would you outlay your job description?
I see newborns. I see Olympic level athletes and kind of everything in between. And that makes it very interesting, a lot of fun. And I think where it really works is when you start to get kids at that, let's say, middle to secondary school environment. They're adolescents. Talking to adults is not usually their favorite thing to do, especially when that adult may tell them not to do something or tell them that they're hurt and they're going to be out for a while. But if you walk in that room and you say, hey, look, how's your team doing? And tell me about your position, suddenly we've got a connection point. Suddenly we're going to be able to have a nice discussion. And down the road, I might ask about school. I might ask about how their friends are doing, how they're getting sleep, that type of stuff. So, having the experience of working with the very young to more of our elite athletes gives me that perspective. It gives me a little bit of street cred too. If I walk in a room and parent might say, "Oh, have you worked with high level volleyball players? Look at the walls." Uh-huh. Suddenly I've got them. They
Mm.
understand that, okay, you've been there. You understand what my daughter, my son's going through. So I think that's where that experience from the spectrum of the kids I take care of can really pay off.
Um, when you're when you're working, is how do you assess the cause of an injury? Because I've been caught out in the past with injuries where I've seen a physio or something and not misdiagnosed, but they kind of were. Oh, it must be this. There's that kind of preemptive. Oh, well, it must be this, and it's kind of straight out of a textbook. So how do you approach it?
You want to find out, what is the athlete doing? What is their sport and or sports of choice? What position they play in? Who they playing with? How long they've been doing this? When did they start feeling something was off? Then we kind of go big picture. What are they doing perhaps in the weight room? Are they doing any additional training? Have they changed their technique? And then are they getting enough sleep? Are they eating well? What kind of demands do they have in the classroom if they're school age? So it's a big picture stuff. And yeah, sometimes you get stuck with, okay, you hear the first few words, oh, that must be X.
Yeah.
And yeah, 90 odd percent of the time, you're probably right. But you're always thinking about what if Y sneaks in the room right behind them? So you've got to fight that impulse too. Hey, let's make sure we don't jump to conclusions. Or sometimes we will say, okay, most likely it's going to be this thing. But in the back of my mind, here's three other things. And I'll even ask the family, how aggressive do you want to pursue those lesser issues? It might be, let's start a treatment plan. If it works, everybody's happy. If not, maybe we get additional imaging or we go a different route. Some families like to go with, the odds. Hey, 90% odds that wins me in Vegas. Let's go. Others, no, I want every possibility looked at. I want to make sure we have as comprehensive a plan. Fine, it's going to take a little more time, but we're going to do it.
If you is there anything that springs to mind where the cause of the injury was surprising? Like I'd never seen that before.
Well, I'm going to give you one just this very week. I had an athlete come to me concussed on a Friday night playing American football. And we're talking, and he said, yeah, I didn't really feel good even before the game started. Okay. Had some blurry vision, and yeah, I've lost some weight in the past couple of weeks, more than I usually lose during an American football season. And I asked him about sleep. Yeah, I've not been sleeping until I've been getting up and going to the bathroom. Okay, that sounds like perhaps concussion, but let me get you a quick urine sample. Turns out the poor kid had diabetes. So that was his first presentation. So he probably had a concussion, but that was probably not going to be his biggest concern because now he's got diabetes. So it was a really challenging moment. Felt terrible for the family to walk in and say, I
Yeah.
know you came to see me for a concussion, but we got a bigger deal here. At the same time, it was gratifying to find it before he was extremely ill. So that was one that I hope to never have to repeat again.
Yeah, I mean, cause that, but that is like you say, that's gratifying because that's if a different doctor had looked at that and just gone with the concussion, and not just looked a little bit further, it could be weeks or months before anybody noticed he had diabetes, and that down the road, undiagnosed, untreated, especially in football season, that's long term damage could be quite horrendous. Whereas catching it before anything serious has happened is at least can be medically controlled.
Agree. And he's doing well. He's got some adjustment to make. So, yeah, I was pleased that once the information was thrown at us, we were able to put a plan together and get him on the right path.
When if you could have and this is for say and when I say like healthy athletes, I mean just anybody of any age who is fit and is training in whatever discipline, and we'll get into as well different things for different disciplines. But what would you say is like before you start, or how would you like to see people train? What would that plan be? I want you to do this first, and what are the levels?
I think you want to have some intention. So, what are your goals when you train? Do you just show up to the gym and, hey, that machine's open, let's go? Or do you walk in with somewhat of a plan? And if you walked in, hey, did I get a decent amount of sleep last night? Am I making sure I'm taking care of getting my protein intake? Am I getting appropriate fluids so I can help my body with recovery when we're done with all this? Am I kind of taking a look at the picture week to week instead of doing the same thing every week for weeks on end? The body's like a little bit of variability, like to be challenged, like to be surprised at times. So, am I doing that? Am I giving myself the opportunity to try something new? And then am I giving myself some downtime? Am I saying, hey, 7 days a week I'm doing this, or on the seventh day I rested? And doesn't mean I'm going to be a couch potato all day, but I may do something different, go for a walk with my wife, get on a bike, do something that's just, again, a different challenge. So hopefully you walk in with some intent, you're prepared, and you've got somewhat of a plan for the future.
So, and do you like? Do you have a strict philosophy in terms of warm ups, stretching, or anything like that?
I find it's a lot of individual what the athlete needs. And warm up, I think when we were back in school, we were taught you stretch right at the beginning. And now I think what we have learned is that it helps to be warmed up first. So instead of going into a training session and immediately going to a stretching phase, hey, maybe we do a dynamic warm up. We do a bit of running, we do some bear crawls, we do some jumping jacks. Once the body's warm, now we go ahead and do our stretching regimen. And I'll look at our Olympic athletes when I go to, let's say, the volleyball gym and I watch the warm up. There is a coordinated team warm up, but many of the athletes have already done their own individual warm up. And it can be as varied. If we got 12 athletes, we might have 12 different warm ups going on, each of them probably utilizing their past experience, their injury history to figure out what works. So it's not a one size fits all. We often will have a team warm up, and that's important. And it's as much for camaraderie, but each athlete brings and does their own warm up ahead of the time.
Yeah. It's interesting that the what is the like because when you're working with the highest athletes, what how do they cope with injuries? What's their mindset towards that?
It varies. We have some athletes who are very methodical. They'll ask questions about how did I get here? Are we certain about the diagnosis? And very detailed step by step, how am I going to come back? And they're very concerned that this information is shared with coaches and every member of the team. So there's no ambiguity, that everybody has confidence that they will make it back. Some athletes like, just tell me what I'm going to do, and off we go. Some athletes will give us an immediate emotional reaction, and we can at least read that and react. Others, we know they're giving us the poker face right now, and the minute they get outside the room, there's going to be a whole different reaction. That might be the athlete we check in with a few hours later and say, hey, how are you handling all this? So as you work with them, and there might be one member of the team who has a better connection, hey, do us a favor, check in with them later today, make sure they find out what they processed, find out what they need, and let's work with it. So it's kind of understanding A, the athlete, B, how they react to things, and then who in their world is their connection point. Who are they going to turn to? Are they going to turn to their parent? They're going to turn to somebody they've coached in the past. So it's really kind of a whole environment thing to help them get through things.
Yeah, I like that term, who's their connection point, because it's that sort of just digging down another level, isn't it? Beyond, and I suppose that's that thing, is the injuries are beyond physical.
Oh, there's a huge emotional component. And when you get to higher level athletes, we're not the first medical team they've worked with. They may have worked with somebody since childhood. So we'll always say, if you want us to send copies of reports, images, we'll do it. We don't purport to be the only authority. So we're willing to work with other people. And I think that brings a sense of calm to the athlete. Like, all right, great. Maybe I've worked with somebody I trust. I just want them to cast eyes on it. So like you said, the connection point is key. And the more the athlete feels those connection points are being met, the more we can get an appropriate recovery. When they're buying in, the recovery can happen.
Do you come across people of all skill sets, really, all levels, who just seem to be more prone to injury versus people that just shake everything off and never get injured?
It seems that way. I mean, I'll have athletes will come and say, here we are again. And, we have a little laugh at it. And they'll say, I just can't seem to shake the injury. I like you, doc, but I don't want to keep seeing you. And you look at their teammate who's going through pretty much the same training cycle. And hey, good morning. And they walk right by, and off to the court they go. And sometimes athletes will be really down, like, why is this happening? And, we try to look at the big picture. And on occasion, we might find some things that we can modify. And sometimes it's just bad luck. So you try to be empathetic. You really try to sit down and look at things. And sometimes it's just that phase. My teenage athletes, when they go through a growth spurt, that's when they tend to get hurt. Sophomores in high school, sophomores in secondary school, for some reason, they like to get hurt. My son was one of them. And there are times I'll just look at the athlete and go, look, I've been through this before. Some athletes seem to keep wanting to hurt themselves, and all of a sudden I don't hear from them for a year. We'll get you there. You look at the big picture and you see what you can modify it. And hopefully this is the last time we'll have this conversation.
Do you think there is a level of genetics involved, though, where some people just can just don't injure as easily?
I think so. I think some people, either their physical makeup, maybe their emotional makeup. We have some athletes, if they aren't 100%, they're going to let somebody know about it. Other athletes can handle, okay, my hamstring feels a little tight, but I've worked through this before. I'm not going to let anybody know. And some are a little hesitant. I don't want to let anybody know because they may tell me not to practice today. So they're going to be letting us know only if it's pretty apparent. Others are afraid, well, if I don't say something and it gets worse, I'll be disappointed in myself. They're going to show up early. We've got some athletes who have increased joint flexibility. Really cool if you're a gymnast. You might be able to contort your body into a way that the rest of us can only dream about, but it also puts you at higher risk for joint issues, maybe kneecaps coming out of place, something like that can cause a future injury. So yes, sometimes the makeup the athlete has can put them at higher risk.
Yeah. And I mean, you must see, well, maybe you don't see many of the YouTube influencers and stuff, without naming names, because that's kind of not my thing. But do you ever hear things and just think, I wish you would just shut up? That's just not helpful.
I have athletes bring stuff in. I have athletes who will bring things up because, sometimes I'll ask, where did you get this info? Oh, it was on TikTok or YouTube. And usually the parent and I will kind of roll eyes and, do you want to see it? No, thank you. But give me like the elevator pitch. What are they telling you? Okay. And you have to at least acknowledge it because that's what's going through their world.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, they might have some valid points, but that's probably a gross oversimplification, or that may not apply to you. So let's kind of backtrack and let's find a way that's not YouTube influenced, more you're influenced.
I like that. That's actually it's a gross kind of over simplification of an issue, and the ones that always spring to mind, and probably I'm more sensitive because I'm 51, is the 20-year-old that tells me how to prevent injuries as I get older. It's just like, dude, come and see me when you're 51. and I'm not saying at 30 and 40 you can't give great advice. I'm just saying that when you're 20, you will never appreciate how well you bounce.
I've got two 19-year-old sons, 21-year-old daughter. One of my sons is really into fitness. God bless him. But he'll come in and go, "Oh, Dad, you should try this." And I'm in my late 50s. And I'm like, "Greg, thank you so much. I'll stick with what I'm doing." And you know what? If all goes according to plan, 20 years from now, you can give me a call and you can let me know how things are working out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he'll give me a call, I hope in 20 years, and say, Dad, I can't do things at 40 that I could do at 20. Uh-huh. And some of the things I probably told you, yeah, okay. So
Yeah, I had
the beauty of getting older, the
yeah.
wisdom of age.
I had a similar conversation with a friend this morning because I'm just kind of steadily getting back into training because I just had a few injuries over the years, and he was like, "Oh, how did it go?" I said, "Yeah, no, I completed what I needed to do." And there's this thing where I realised when I was recovering from some injuries that mentally I'm very good at just saying, "Do another set." Yeah, I know you feel uncomfortable. Just do another set. And I realised that it was just literally breaking my body down and not recovering from those injuries. So I'm going through this stage at the moment where when I train, when I work out, like so today it was just 100 sandbag squats, and I just started with sets of 5 until I felt that I was really warmed up. And then there was about 3 sets of 10, and then I think I finished on a set of 20 to get to 100. I let that take me an hour. Instead, I didn't even put a clock on to see how long it would take me. As soon as I felt rested, I started again. And my mate was like, "So you didn't push it?" Nope, I didn't push it. And do you know what I mean? It's just like, why not? It's like, because that's how I'll injure myself. Or I'll just start to break down again. I said, I've got to get to a level of, this is what I think I'm realising, and I could be massively overestimating, but I need to get to a level of fitness again where I can actually push myself and not just push myself.
Makes perfect sense. And I think as we get older, we know our bodies pretty well. Yes, you've got to break through pre-established thresholds, and that's training. You can't just do the same thing every day. But there's a difference between, okay, I'm pushing myself. I feel like I'm making gains. And there are days like, oh, this hurts in a way that's not going to work, or it's going to hurt for the next several days. It's going to set me back. And you have the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Or like you said, you start with, okay, I'm going to do 100 total, but it's not going to be 20, 20, 20, and 20. I'll start with 5. I'll go to 10. I got all day. There's no rush. My fitness coach, I think I get yelled at the most because I like to rush through things. Slow down. I think that's my name. I think she doesn't know my first name, but she knows me as slow down. And when I do better and I feel better. So sometimes I don't listen as best I should, but you're right. When you slow down, when you kind of go, what's going to work for me? Things happen. Not a rush.
Yeah, I'm. My goal is to get back to being able to just train consistently, because in the past I'd say I have a good mentality for making myself really uncomfortable. Sorry, and just like, and I might even plan a workout that's going to take 3 hours. It'll just be absolutely ridiculous, and for no reason other than afterwards I think, oh yeah, all right, I'm glad I pushed through that. But you can't do that once you've had an injury and you're recovering. But the mentality is still there, but the body conditioning isn't. And I think I've had about 2 years of on off injuries just because mentally I was actually really naive about what I was doing. But I was blinkered because I thought I knew what I was doing. And it's just I suddenly realised it's like, actually I'm not injury prone. I've just blinkered about what my body needs from me in this moment in this training session.
There's that, and then there's also the new normal. Oh, I'm in my mid
Yeah.
50s, so my back should hurt because everybody's back hurts when you're 50. And you kind of carry that, oh no, don't worry about it, it's just being 50. And then one day you wake up and go, wait a sec, I don't have to deal with this.
Mm.
And that's the day you make an adjustment. Maybe I go see somebody, hey, help me get through this. And takes a few months because we're not young anymore. Hey, the back doesn't hurt as much. Is it going to be zero? Probably not. But hey, now I can do things that had I not taken the time away, wouldn't have happened. So yeah, there's a bit of stubbornness, and you just have to accept, okay, I don't have to be hurt, and I'm gonna have to be humble enough to go. And like they say, sometimes medical folks are the worst patients. So when I
Yeah.
go and see my colleagues and I laugh and I go, I'm sure you're going to tell all the patients, oh, yeah, doc was here today and he's as bad as you guys are at times. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, it is. Do you have any because I love over the years how think things kind of do cycles. Like, for years everybody is always on about the posterior chain, always warming up your posterior chain, making sure everything is connected to the posterior chain, and then that'll get rephrased at a later date as in mind muscle connection, and then mind muscle connection. So there's always some kind of new thing that everybody is supposed to be doing. It used to be foam rolling. Everybody should be foam rolling. There should be your IC bands and stuff like that. But do you have any like basic standard? So if you were doing a basic standard assessment of any athlete or any patient that comes in, right? I just want to have an overall scope. What are your basic sort of go-tos?
I will look at the front of the chest again because we're so technology dependent. We're always kind of leaning forward into our screens.
Okay.
So I'll see a lot of athletes come in with the front part of the chest, the pec area tight, and they've got the shoulders rotated forward, their head and neck are forward. I'll look at their scapula. Do they have good scapular control? And often they don't, especially on that dominant arm. How's their shoulder range of motion? Often it's suboptimal. They may not have enough follow through on their dominant arm. I'll move south to the lumbosacral area. I really like to look at glute function, and most everybody's glutes are functioning, maybe not well enough. That will lead to some tightness in the hip flexors, and that's just going to affect general mobility, getting out of a chair, going up and down stairs. I like to do single leg stuff because if you're going to be running, you're going to be on single leg activity throughout the time. And I'm looking at functional stuff. I'm not just thinking of what moves you have to do on the field, but as we get older, you're carrying the groceries in up a flight of stairs. How are you going to be able to handle that? In and out of cars, how do you handle that? So I'm looking at general movement and I'm acknowledging that it's not a one size fits all thing.
Mm.
I'm a big believer in active, let's get muscles working. So if you want to do the foam rolling, great, but that's only to calm down the muscle irritation. So you get the gluteal muscles and the IT band and the hamstrings to fire better. So I try to combine both some of the passive modalities, but also a lot of the active modalities.
And do you have any? Because you mentioned like active warm ups earlier, and one of the things you mentioned is bear crawls, which for people that don't know, it's a very good exercise at any level for firing up everything. It's just like I think it's kind of one of the few exercises where every muscle at some point gets involved. Did you have a few favorites like that?
Bear crawls, I don't enjoy them. I probably will curse their very name when I do them, but as you said, they're pretty effective. Jumping jacks will get the upper and lower body going. We sometimes do some jump rope activity to get warmed up. So again, we're trying to utilize upper and lower body. We're trying to get the heart rate up to probably, 20, 30 beats above what you usually are at. Trying to make a bit of a sweat. Should you be able to talk through it? Yes, but you're not going to be able to have a full-blown conversation without taking a few breaths. That way we've got the body warmed up. If at that point you want to start more of your focused stretching routine, I think the muscles are more pliable, the muscles are more amenable to getting that stretch.
How would you suggest to somebody, I want to be great, but I don't want to get injured?
I think again, going back to what we talked about, have a plan. So I want to have an idea of what my goals are. I want to have an idea how I'm going to advance. I'm not just going to go to the gym. Hey, there's the bench press. Let's put on a bunch of shiny plates and see what I can do. I'm going to be thinking about, okay, where do I start with my technique? Where do I start with how much am I going to do? And I'm not going to bench every day. I'm going to probably bench, okay, maybe twice a week. But what other complementary things can I do to help that bench press become more effective? So it's a bit of preparation. It's a bit of analysis. Hey, how'd this week go? This week felt really good. I like where I'm at. This week stunk. I felt stale. I didn't make any real gains. What do I have to do differently? And then try to make it as fun as possible and, you know, probably not go at it alone. Find people you can go with. Find your mates that you can push. They'll push you and make it a little bit more of a enjoyable experience.
Okay. One something because this is something I very little idea about in terms of um are they the same? So do you know, like, say somebody rolls their ankle, so you've kind of got a physical injury where,
Yep.
and you know the causality because a trip slipped on the court, whatever, versus somebody who gets a calf strain, which can be, rolling your ankle could probably lead to a repetitive injury down the line if it doesn't heal properly, whereas a calf muscle is strain tends to get repetitive if not healed. Is there a different approach to how you rehab that?
But I think you're still looking at the function. What can you do? What can't you do right now? I always like to look though at the bigger picture. So if you come with an ankle injury, I might be looking up at your hip strength. Is there perhaps some factor in the way that your glutes, hamstrings fire that puts you at higher risk? Were you fatigued? Was it, hey, that practice was 2.5 hours and you did great for the first 2 hours? Maybe that's where we got to set your threshold. Do you have increased ligament laxity? Are you the kind of person who can hyperextend your elbows? Again, that's going to put you at higher risk. So I was kind of looking at, what do you bring to the table? Yeah, you could have slipped on a wet spot on the court, and most human beings would have done the same thing you would have. You would have sprained the ankle. But is there anything else in your makeup that maybe made that worse than it could have been or put you at higher risk for the future? Is this your first time you sprained your ankle, or is this the fifth time? We know the more times you sprain it, the more the tissues aren't quite as tight. That's going to put you at higher risk.
Yeah, I know that from an injury. I rolled my ankle loads and loads and loads of times, and the physio was looking at it one day. It's like, this thing's barely in its socket.
There's not much left there.
Yeah. Like, literally, it's just like, yeah, you know, it's, and it is strange because you always imagine that things heal 100% and heal back to where they were. And actually, if you just roll the same ankle several times, even if it's over a couple of decades, it never recovers function. I have a good range of motion. I can still do like Kazakh squats and stuff like that. You know, I can still get my heels on my ankles, to my backside. Sorry, but yeah, I could roll an ankle just looking at a flat piece of paper. It's just like there's nothing in there, and that's when you know, when you have a young child, or a child that comes in, because that's a period where things are growing at disproportionate rates to each other. Did you see that, like with kids kind of pop ankles or knees, or and it just becomes a bit of a habit because something's waiting to grow?
Without a doubt. To see a kid who's, let's say, 10 or 11, they jump into your room, they can be hopping up and down off the table, not a care in the world. Fast forward a few years, they're now the gawky adolescent. They've got these long legs. They've got limited development of the muscles that support them. They almost are tripping walking into your room, and you'll hear the history. I was at practice and I just tried to go for a ball and I felt the pop. And you look at them and they're just not physically ready there. And the challenging part is usually it's at a point where in a lot of sport paradigms, oh, you're now 13 or 14. You should be really doing one sport at the same, that's it. And we're going to add strength training, we're going to add agility training, and it all sounds great. Yet the body may not be ready yet.
Hmm.
Sometimes you got to look at them and say, give me 6 months. Let these growth areas kind of mature a bit. Let some of these muscles catch up with each other. Let's get you to start walking normally again. And once you're a little more coordinated, once you got a little bit more body control, now we can have some fun. But if you try to do all these things right now, when you're growing way quickly than you should be, we're going to have some problems.
Yeah. And how do you communicate that to their parents?
Gently. Sometimes it's a challenge because, again, I try to go with the positive.
Yeah.
Hey, your son or daughter is growing, and we want to maximize their growth. Every kid wants to be taller than their parents. Every kid will ask me, how tall do you think I'm going to be? Well, if you want to maximize your growth, you got to eat well, sleep well, and you got to give your growth plates some love. So you don't want to be pushing them too hard. So sometimes I go with that angle, and that will at least get their attention. I'll look at them and say, look, I know you got a lot of investment, your time, your money, but if you're watching your child kind of struggling right now, is it worth it? Is it worth the frustration? Is it worth, all the PayPal and all the different monies you're spending to watch them come home and be kind of emotionally beat up? And then sometimes I go, look, I've seen this. I've had other families go through it. And that way they know they're not alone. This is the first time we've seen this type of thing, and that we've seen some pretty positive results. The ones that have done the best have taken that time, have maybe backed off for just a short period, 3, 6 months. I know when you're 13 sounds like a eternity, but when you're a little bit older, you can at least have that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any favorite memories from your time with the Olympics?
Oh boy, just the people, just being able to share the experiences with the athletes and my fellow staff. Having been at one Olympic Games in Beijing, I think my highlight, other than whatever happened on the court, I was told that when you go to the Olympic Games, there's going to be a moment when you realize you're there. It's going to hit you. You're at the Olympic Games. So 3 days into the village, I had some free time. I'm going to go for a run. So I'm running, and you get that endorphin runner's high that hit me. I'm at the Olympic Games. I am running in the Olympic Village, getting ready for the Olympic Games. And that was a pretty cool feeling. I was like, okay, that was my Olympic moment. Here we are. We're ready to go.
Well, because that was going. You answered it for me because I was going to ask you. Were you living in the village? Because that must be surreal. Because as you're walking around, the world's most famous athletes are going to be in and around, and I'm
It
guessing
is.
in that environment, it's a little bit more relaxed, and they are just walking around.
It is relaxed, but it's also absolutely fascinating to be, let's say, with members of our volleyball team. We'll go into the dining hall, and there's hundreds of athletes. And we had mentioned Kobe Bryant. Well, Kobe Bryant comes in the dining hall.
Yeah.
The entire place stopped.
Oh, it
The
does
entire
happen. Oh,
place.
right. Okay.
Oh, the only activity were people reaching for their phones, take pictures. So even in an environment where everybody in that room is pretty special, you don't get the Olympic Games unless you got something special.
Mm.
There are those who are above and beyond that can just move the room. So he would walk in, grab something to eat, and everybody's watching. Not a word is being said. So that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that does fascinate me because I don't know why. I don't know, I don't know why I thought it'd be different, but I would just, because it's that village and you're contained a kind of away from the public to some degree. My understanding is you're away from the media as well. And for some reason, I would imagine that when those superstars turn up, the athletes are just like, yeah, well, we're all at the Olympics. We're all the best at what we do. So I didn't realize that, like when some of them turn up, everyone's just like oh my God,
There are
that.
few that supersede. There are few that are above and beyond, and they're not that many. But when it happens, it is fascinating.
Yeah, because like you say, these are Olympic athletes. You don't get there for any other reason than you're the best of the best. So when you watch those people, like, oh my God, that's that person. You're just like, oh, you know.
Yep.
But it must be good though as well, because you, especially with you know, because you're in that environment where everyone is the best of the best. The coaches are the best of the best. The physios, the pediatricians, everybody is, you know, nobody is there on good merit. Everybody is there because no, that's the person we need. You know, this is the person that is at the next level as well. Because and I don't mean it disrespectfully to any peers or colleagues or stuff, but there's levels to every environment, every sport, every sort of institution and business. So you yourself are floating among the higher echelons of your industry. So when it must, like I said, when you're in that village, like you say, there's that moment you realise, like, bloody hell, I'm at the Olympic Village. It must be just interesting to see all of those other nations and all of those athletes, because you just recognise them because they're figures in sport, and that's your industry.
It is absolutely amazing, to go to, let's say, the dining hall and just seeing all the different countries. In fact, there was a time where you're in the village and you're given pins and you're given pins to trade. So part of the game at dinner would be who got the pin from the smallest country.
Okay.
And we would sit there and so we'd come back. I just found the Seashell Islands. And for some of the athletes, it was a great geography. Like, where the heck are the Seashell Islands? So we'd find out, okay, who went. And so we'd be sitting there and so we'd go, wait, there's an athlete from a country I didn't recognize. And that poor athlete would get bombarded with requests for pins because they're from such a small country, or that might be the only athlete from that country.
Yeah.
Suddenly they were the most popular guy in the room because we're getting your pin. So I'm thinking, here are the highest level athletes in the world. We're looking at a big competition, and their biggest concern tonight is can they get a pin from somebody from a very small country or a country no one's ever heard of before today.
Because in between their sport, it's downtime, isn't it? You've got to find a way to switch off.
Without a doubt.
You've got to find a way
Without a doubt.
yeah. And
And that's where it gets fascinating. And that was fun, not just every time we travel, how do we spend the time between the times, between the training sessions, between the rides on the bus, between the meals? How do you occupy time? And how do you do it in the most productive way? How do you do it in a way that builds some team camaraderie? Some athletes are really good at, hey, bonding with their teammates. Others need some downtime, me time. But it's a huge part, especially when you're on the road for weeks, especially when you're going overseas and you're maybe the only English speaking American or English speaking athlete on your team. How do you pass that time?
because I imagine as well, because when they're not at the Olympics, they're all either in sports with teams, even if it or single event, where these athletes are their friends because they're the people they're hanging around with at their own tournaments. And then, of course, once you get to somewhere like the Olympics, it's all about your country. But they've probably, some of them got 20, 30 friends in the room from different countries. So do you get a lot of that mingling going on?
Without a doubt. If you look at volleyball in particular, it's a unique sport because we have our training base for the United States probably half the year. That's where our athletes are. So our athletes know each other because they've trained together for 6 months during that year. When they're overseas, though, they're playing in countries in Europe, in Asia. So, like, for example, we'll be playing a team from Germany, and any athlete who plays in Germany knows half those guys.
Yeah.
So you'll even see before the match handshakes, hugs, how's the family doing? So people know each other. It's
Yeah.
a pretty tight community. And, they'll come back in the room and, oh, I can't wait to play against so and so. He's, and I can tell he's at the top of his game and I can tell he wants us tonight. So it's not as if these are people who, hey, you're on the other side of the net. You have no idea who they are. Often, hey, they were your teammate in Champions League just a few months ago, and now we're
Right.
trying to beat them for the medal. Pretty fascinating.
And do you get them like catching up with each other in the dining room or in like downtime where they do go and mingle with them? Because that's actually my
Without a
friend. Yeah,
doubt. With that, and their families know each other because, some of them will tell us flat out, I was the only foreigner playing in this team, and that family took me in. If it was a holiday or a long weekend, they made sure I had a meal. So, yes, your competitors on the court, but off the court, there's a lot of camaraderie.
that's good. I like that because it's good. Just lastly, and it's completely unrelated to anything we've discussed. It's just my random question. I want you to imagine you have a time machine. The time machine is a car of your choice, whatever car you want. Where would you go? What would the car be? And what would be playing on the radio?
So, time machine, where would I go? Wow. I think what I would do is plop my kids in that car. So the music would probably have to be pretty contemporary now to keep them happy. The car would have to be nice and good size and quick. So maybe we'll put a nice little sports car because that would get their attention. And I would go back maybe 20 years, and I would want my kids to see their grandfathers. Their grandmothers are still alive, God bless them. And I would just want their grandfathers to see what kind of great kids they turned out to be.
Who are their
And that would
grandfathers?
be just grandfathers. Yeah, my father and my wife's father were very special influences, obviously, to us. And I think about that. Their
Yeah.
grandmothers have had to see them grow up, and they're pretty dang proud. I'd like for their grandfathers to have just a few moments to say, you guys did okay. You guys did well. I'm proud of you. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then maybe the music would be some kind of nostalgic, but it would just be that moment of, hey, bringing it all together.
Just quickly on that, tell me about your father-in-law and your father.
They were good people. My father emigrated to the United States and to Cyprus when he was 15. And I never really appreciated it. He told me when I turned 15, hey, when I was your age, I was coming over on a boat. And I had nobody I knew here except my uncle and my aunt. And they brought me here to get me an education. And now that I am a bit older, I appreciate, hey, he was dislodged from the world he knew to come to a country with expectations. And he was going to make something of himself. God bless it, he did. But just to be separated, even though he had a loving set of folks to capture him here, they weren't his parents or his sisters. So I look at that. And my father-in-law was also the kind of person who built himself up, raised three wonderful daughters, and I think just was the quiet. He traveled quite a bit. And my wife said, it was kind of a tough thing. He'd be gone. When he was home, he was home. But you realize now that's what he had to do to support the family.
Yeah.
And you realize a lot more of those struggles that I'm sure he did not appreciate wanting to get on a plane. We all think, oh, cool, you get to travel.
It's
That
not
gets
like
old pretty quick.
yeah, it does get old quick.
Yeah,
People
those
don't
hotels
realize.
and those airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do
So
not
the
realize that
perspective.
is crap.
Yeah. Traveling's fun if you do it for holiday with your family and you're going somewhere exciting and your responsibilities are minimal. Otherwise, it's the same day, just a different place with a lot more moving parts.
It is.
So I just appreciate what they both did. And, unfortunately, they both passed away when my kids were young. So I just love my kids. They've seen their grandmothers who are wonderful people. They both are vibrant, but I want them to see what their grandfathers were like too.
I like that. That's really, really nice. That is genuinely nice. And Chris, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your time, David. Thanks for the wonderful questions, the opportunity just to sit down and have a conversation.
And that was Chris. Please do check out the links in the description for Chris's organisation, where you can find out about Chris and what him and his colleagues do. And listen to what he was saying. As you get older, injury prevention is a big part of life. You want to do your best. You want to preserve the health and fitness that you've got. And stay active. Take care of yourself. And on that note, for everybody that listens, watches, tunes in, comments, likes and shares, thank you very much. I appreciate all of the support. I really do. And please, wherever you are, whatever you believe, do take care and be blessed. Thank you.